Good morning, Ian. Happy Wednesday. As ever, please make sure that you've got some speakers handy or some headphones handy, and you have got your speakers on. And make sure that you press a little audio icon to hear me. Theme of the week this week is resilience, and this is something that you and I have spoken about many a time in assemblies, in lessons, and in just day to day. Now, I feel like we're living in a world where words are being created all of the time. And I saw this word, bounce back ability, and that really got me thinking about our assembly and the theme of resilience, because for me, resilience is all about how you respond to something and how you respond to something that happens to you. And during this assembly, we're going to talk a little bit about what resilience is and ways in which you can help yourself build resilience and make yourself a more bounce-backable person. As ever in our assemblies, I like to start off with defining what that key idea or key word means that we're going to be talking about in our assemblies. So I want you to think, before you have a think about what I'm talking about, I want you to think about what you think resilience means, because I guarantee you that depending on your own experience of resilience, you may have a different idea. I was thinking about two definitions. Number one, resilience refers to a material's ability to spring back into shape. And I want you to have a little think about for me materials that you use day to day that do that spring back to shape really easily. Now, you might think about an elastic band, for example. If you pull an elastic band and then let it go, it goes back, it springs back to its original shape. If you find a material that is more brittle and more fragile, if you tend to bend it out of shape too far, it breaks. And really, this is a good metaphor for what and how we want ourselves to be. We don't want to be brittle. We don't want to be fragile. We want to be able to spring back to our normal shape without breaking if something happens. And the second definition that I'm going to talk to you about is this one here: the ability to recover quickly from difficulties. Now, for that one, I was thinking about an athlete. And it's amazing when you watch a replay. They've been playing a lot of replays of the Olympics recently, haven't they? And if you watch Usain Bolt, for example, or if you watch Mo Farah, once they've finished a race, yes, they're out of breath, but they recover so quickly. The fitter you are, the more quickly you can recover from something. I mean, if I go for a run now, I can't talk for about an hour because I take so much longer to recover. So before we move on in our assembly today, I want you to think about that second definition, our ability to recover quickly from difficulties. I want you to reflect on how quickly you think you recover from difficulties. In some ways, though, our resilience is similar to a material's ability to spring back to shape. And you may sometimes feel more like that brittle piece of plastic or that brittle piece of china that if you bend it too far, it will break. But actually, every single one of us is stronger than we know. And we all have inside of us the ability to spring back into shape, no matter what life throws at us. And over the next couple of slides, we're going to be thinking about that as a concept. Okay, so before we go any further, I wanted to share with you a really, really famous quote. Houston, we have a problem. Now, you may have heard this quote, but you may not know exactly where the saying comes from. So, during the moon flight of Apollo 13, which was on the 14th of April 1970 in America, one of the American NASA space crew was having a conversation with the US base, which is based in Houston. And he started the conversation by saying, "Houston, we have a problem." Now, there is a very famous remake of or film of Apollo 13 with Tom Hanks, which is probably the first time I heard this quote. But it's actually really interesting because they didn't just have a problem, they had a life-threatening, serious issue. And actually what was happening on the ship when they had this conversation is there was a problem, there was a fault with the spaceship's oxygen tank. Now the crew had to relay the information back to the base in Houston and work together remotely to deal with the situation. Now, that's a huge, huge life-threatening problem. They're in space and they're relying on people back down on Earth to help them. Now, the spaceship did land safely, albeit when they got back, they had to sort of evacuate from the ship, and I think they landed in the water, in the ocean somewhere. But they did land safely, and all of the crew survived. Now, it wasn't their ability to communicate that saved them. It wasn't the quick thinking of their colleagues at the US base in Houston. I believe it was their resilience that saved them. Their ability to be faced with a problem they would and could have never prepared for, that could have completely jeopardised not only their lives, but possibly the lives of other people trying to go and save them. It could have been a huge, huge problem. But their ability to deal with that issue and bounce back and not let it faze them is really what saved them. Now, I hope and pray that none of you are ever in a situation where the issue you're facing is as life-threatening as this one. But what I do hope is that some of the ideas we're going to talk about in the next couple of slides will help you face this problem with as much resilience and bravery as these men did and dealt with on this particular day. So, rather ironically, I feel like I have to start this assembly on a negative in order to get to the positive at the end. And funnily enough, that's kind of my message of this slide, that problems are inevitable. We will, every single one of us, be faced with some sort of problem, some sort of challenge in our lifetime. And I think we would all agree that if we only ended up facing one big problem, one big challenge in our lifetimes, I think we'd be pretty lucky. But it's how we face those problems which determine what happens next. What I wanted to think about is how we face those problems and how we see those problems sometimes. Some days seem to be full of problems. And at other times, days can feel completely problem-free. And I bet you if you sit there and think about a day when you were back at school, back into a normal day, normal routine, I bet you can think of problems that you faced day to day. And they probably ranged from not being able to get the last chicken bites in the canteen to getting a low grade and feeling disappointed in an exam. Problems can be little or they can be large. But every single problem needs to be dealt with and can be dealt with no matter what the size of it. But that begs the question, doesn't it? What if it all goes wrong? There are going to be times when things just don't go to plan. We find ourselves with a problem, we face it, we deal with it, and then it goes wrong. What happens then? So I'd like you to think about a situation where, maybe like the slide we've just had previously, something's gone wrong, you thought you fixed it, but it's gone wrong again. And I want you to think about how that feeling of dealing with a problem made you feel, or being faced with a problem made you feel. Did it make you feel angry? Did you feel a surge of anger because something's happened and it was completely out of your control? Did you feel you wanted to blame somebody else? Were you worried? Did you feel nervous or concerned about what might happen next? Were you upset? Did you get that sense of dread that you had consequences to face and you weren't sure what might happen? Or did you simply just want to hide? Escape, avoid it, hide away. Every single one of those reactions is normal. Each of those reactions are what make us human. We should feel those things when we face a problem or something happens, because that's what makes us human. But how we deal with those normal reactions, with the feeling of anger and worry and upset and dread, when we deal with those, we can actually, and how we deal with those can actually help us build our resilience. The next couple of slides, we're going to go through each of these ways to build our resilience. So the first thing that I want you to think about in order to build your resilience is learning from your mistakes. We learn to be resilient from a very, very young age. And resilience comes from different areas. Mistakes are actually really, really useful for helping us to improve and become more resilient, become better at whatever we're trying to do the next time. Imagine when you were a baby. You probably won't be able to remember it, but imagine a baby when they're learning to walk for the first time. They fall over a lot. But imagine if when you were learning to walk, you fell over and you thought, I can't get up. I'm not going to get up. I can't do this. Imagine what position you would be in now. Babies keep on trying. We are born with more resilience than I reckon we have now. Babies don't give up. They keep getting up. They might cry, they might have a bruise, but they get up no matter what. And every time they get up, they learn something new. They learn not to put that foot further away from themselves. They know to actually maybe balance their hands or not to carry the toy next time. We can learn a lot from babies and from this idea. If we learn from our mistakes, instead of giving up, we can just keep on improving, keep succeeding, and we build resilience as we go. Sometimes we just need to look at the problem in a different way. Looking at something in a different way can help us to see the positives, to see a different way to approach something. We need to take another view of a situation to see if we can create something useful from it. On this slide, I have put 3 really famous images, and they're almost like optical illusions. And each one of them you can look at the picture in more than one way. So the first one there for you, I want you to have a little think about what animal you can see. In the second picture, I'd like you to tell me how many feet and legs the elephant has. And in the third picture, I want you to tell me whether you see a young person or an old person. We need to work hard. Anything that is worthwhile needs working at. And the more effort we put into something, the better it will be. And if we come across a difficulty, we need to work hard to overcome it, because if we don't, we will always be faced with that difficulty. We will never be able to work past it. I want you to have a little think about a time that you've worked really hard at something. And during that time you've worked hard, it's been painful, you've wanted to give up, but you haven't. And at the end of whatever that challenge was, it's been worthwhile. Did that make you more resilient? I've put 2 examples of what came to my mind when I was making this slide, and that is me skiing. I love skiing. My husband is a brilliant skier, much better at it than me, but he's fearless and I'm not. I'm really nervous. And I've had to really work hard at skiing and work hard at my confidence. And the bigger picture you can see there is me skiing earlier this year. And luckily there's nobody around me that makes me jump, but I had to work hard at that. I did keep falling over. And my husband said something to me the other day. He said, what's the worst thing that you think could happen? And I would say, well, I don't want to hurt myself. And maybe it's because he's a sportsman as well, but his response to that was, well, pain is only temporary. What have you got to lose? You're never going to be on this mountain again. Get up. If you hurt yourself, you hurt yourself, but you'll get better. And he was absolutely right. So I did that. I got up again and tried my hardest. Yes, I cried my way mostly down the slope, but at the end of it, I was rewarded. And I was rewarded with that smaller picture there that you can see underneath the sign that says, work hard, dream big, never give up. And I'm so glad I did not give up, because I was rewarded with one of the most spectacular views I think I've ever seen on this planet. But I was also rewarded with satisfaction that I could do something that I didn't think I'd be able to do. And I will continue to be rewarded, because now I know and I'm confident enough that I'll be able to go skiing with my husband again, with friends again, and with my family. And I will always now have lifetime of memories, because I kept going and I got up. And I'd have been really upset with myself if I'd just given up and I'd said, look, I can't do it, because I wouldn't then be able to go skiing in the future with family or friends. But one thing you've got to remember, when you are working incredibly hard, there is another option other than just giving up. And that is just to pause and to take a break. If something is proving really difficult, sometimes moving away from it, distracting yourself, can really help you. It helps you to keep calm, and it might help you to look at it from a different perspective. Now, keeping with the theme of skiing, what you can see here, as well as probably a familiar face on that table drinking a coffee with me, is me taking a moment to pause, to rebuild my energy, have some caffeine. I think I'm probably having a hot chocolate, and take a moment to pause and think, right, okay, I can do this. Next time, maybe I might try a different slope or an easier slope. But the key to that is that I didn't just stop and give up. I took a break and I changed my perspective. Because once I'd stopped, once I'd had a laugh with my friends, once I'd taken a moment to calm myself down, the prospect of getting back on those skis, getting back on the mountain, was not as difficult. So I'd like you to have a little think about what you do to distract yourself when you come up with a problem. And if you're sitting there going, I usually just find it really hard, I get really frustrated, and then I get in an argument, or I just get cross and I give up. Think about, well, what is it you could do to give yourself a distraction? You might have, during this time of working from home and during this time of lockdown, you might have felt really frustrated, sitting by a computer with work in front of you and whoever's looking after you at home saying, come on, get on with it, come on. And you might have just gone, do you know what? It's too hard. I can't do this. But we know as your teachers that you can, and it's very unlikely that in a classroom you'd have turned around and said that to us. So have a think about what it is you could do in your situation at home, where you are at home, next time you are feeling that frustrated with a piece of work or with someone that you're living with. What could you do to get up and distract yourself that might diffuse the situation and help you see it from a different perspective? Resilience is also built through asking people for help sometimes. There will be times when we as people need to acknowledge and need to know that we just can't do everything ourselves. And asking for help isn't a weakness. It actually builds relationships and makes us stronger. What I want you to do for me, please, is to have a little think about a time when you needed to ask for help and you didn't. And actually a time when you did ask for help and you were really, really glad that you did. Having the ability to look at a problem and look at a difficulty but still remain calm, I think is a really important thing to be able to do. And actually, I put my hands up, it's not always what I find myself doing in situations, but being able to think through a difficulty calmly is really important for building resilience. And if we let our anger get the better of us, we cannot think things through rationally. We can make snap decisions, which can often end up making things worse. Staying calm means we think things through and we work out the best route. Now, we've talked about this in a previous slide. Sometimes that first route, even though we've thought something through calmly, won't always work. But your ability to stay calm in that situation will help you to build your resilience. Now, I want you to have a think about what you do and how you stay calm. Is it something that you need to get better at? Is it something that you're really good at? How do you do it? For me, I sometimes just need to stop and take a deep breath. And often that moment, that second of taking that big deep breath in, taking a big deep breath out, is almost like me opening a new door and seeing a different way to deal with that situation. I'm not sure whether you will have ever heard the saying, but I remember being told this by lots of different people, but laughter is the best medicine. When things go wrong, despite things looking disastrous, there can often be a funny side. And seeing the funny side of a situation often diffuses all of the anger, and that upset can suddenly disappear, leaving us able to sort out exactly what it is we need to do next. Have a think about a time when seeing the funny side might have helped you out in a particular situation. I've put a quote on this slide by Audrey Hepburn. She's a very famous actress who was in a film called Breakfast at Tiffany's, but I thought this quote was great. "I love people who make me laugh. I honestly think it's the thing I like most, to laugh. It cures a multitude of ills. It's probably the most important thing in a person." Now, I probably should have put this slide next to asking for help, because for me, I know that the person or my friends and in my support network, I know that the people that often help me are often also the people that I would laugh with. So as well as thinking about a time when you've seen the funny side, I'd like you to think about those people in your support network that help you to see the funny side in a situation. Now, we talked about this when I was telling you all about my nightmare on the side of a mountain, how I mostly spent my time crying rather than getting down it. But giving up is often the easiest option, and it's certainly the quickest option. However, what would we learn if we gave up when something became too difficult? How would we ever improve if we didn't just keep practicing and keep trying? Keeping on trying is vital for us to build resilience. I want you to have a little think about a time when you had to keep trying at something so that you would get better at it. Was giving up an option? What would have happened if you had given up? Think about what we talked about, that baby that's learning to walk. What would have happened if you had given up trying to walk, or you had given up trying to talk, or you'd given up trying to ride your bike? So I've left this one till last, and that is all about being kind to yourself. Difficulties in life will appear when we least expect them. It's the nature of them. If we knew they were going to come, then we would make sure that we did everything we could to stop them. Difficulties in life that we face will throw us off course and make everything seem really hard. But there's absolutely no point making that even harder for ourselves by critiquing ourselves or by beating ourselves up that something's happened. In a situation that you are faced with, in a difficult situation that you're faced with, give yourself time. Don't be too hard on yourself. Everybody makes mistakes. It's what makes us human. And everybody has a bad day. You've got to try and work out how you can avoid something happening again. And above all, you've got to be kind to yourself when that happens. At the beginning of this assembly, we talked about those materials. And like the material which springs back into shape again, our inner resilience can help us to bounce back and keep on trying.